you for coming out this morning after the fit that the first week back from Labor Day usually is in business and work. I don't know if any of you are experiencing that. It's really something to manage to get here and take a moment to be made uncomfortable. And that's my intent here this morning, is to have you sidle up, get a little bit familiar again with something that you regret. Something that sticks in your craw, that has been there for either a long time or a short time. Something that you may despair of correcting, but you may find a way, an avenue today that will change that for you. Will allow you to look at your valued ties with people anew, even though they seem to have been lost, and to see if there's possibly, just possibly, a mode of recovery. Not just a mode of recovery, but a mode to make that relationship flower into something you never thought it could possibly be. That's my intent today. But if you're looking for the how-to, it's in the book. I'm not going to really speak to that today, because the how-to really doesn't matter much if you don't have a drive to use it. So why would I learn a skill, particularly a skill that's going to take a little capacity, if I don't have a driving need? But if I do have a driving need, that's very different. So let's just say what we're talking about here. You may have watched, along with a billion other people on worldwide TV, in front of a gathering of glittering celebrities, a fracture occur live right in front of you in such a fashion that I think most of us who were watching went, "What was that? What happened there?" Do you know what I'm speaking of? Who is it?
Will Smith.
Will Smith and Chris Rock. That fracture happened live, unscripted, in front of the whole world, on television and in front of the Academy Awards. Do you think that has had an impact on Will Smith's career? Do you think it's had an impact on Chris Rock's reputation? It's kind of funny. I don't know if people are siding one way or the other, but does it really matter? What matters is whether they can fix it. It happened. Can they fix it? Can they recover? Wouldn't that be a marvelous thing if we suddenly heard that they'd gotten together and emerged standing together and saying, "We've resolved the issue and we're one again"? That would be a very different from the normal script, wouldn't it? What about yours? Let's just slip into reverie for a moment and think about a situation. Maybe it's a business associate or a friend. You've had an easygoing interaction with them, and then something happened. They dissed you. They let you down. They forgot something that was really important to you. They maybe have said a sort of an embarrassing or cruel remark. What was that? Do you have anything like that in your recent past? A little hand went across here. Yes? Let's go a little further, a little deeper. Imagine someone that you're really close to, a relative, a friend, a partner, a business partner. They're in your intimate circle. Your destinies are entwined. And then something happened. They crossed you. They called your integrity into question. It violated what you felt was a core agreement. You thought you stood with them, and now you don't know where you stand. Has anyone got one of those? A few hands. Would you like to offer either the softer one or the tougher one? Gordon. Wow. So a 10-year fracture on the mend. Mended right away. Yeah, those are the stories I love to hear. Anyone have one that's not mended? Yes, what would you say?
Somebody in my industry who at one point in time I respected and admired, once they noticed me, they decided that I had stolen everything I knew from them and went on a public rampage about that.
Wow.
It's like, it's the same space, man. There will be similarities.
So they've impugned your reputation publicly,
Yes.
wrongly, in your view? Yeah. These are hard. They cut deep. You know, and you tend to reel. I imagine when this happened for you, you'd be, what was that? The implications are hard to process and the emotions run high. It might have ended in a nasty scrap or an embarrassed silence, but what happened was it broke. The trust between you broke. Eventually get around to reacting. These are like a broken bone. That's why we called the book Fixing Fractures, because this is like your relationship skeleton. It's what holds you up and guides you in your interactions with other people. It sustains you and tells you that where you stand, where you are. But typically, what happens after the breach, people go into reaction mode. There are some that are kind of gunslingers, and I've always sort of secretly envied these people who can just sort of come back with the retort that sets something right, just right on the spot. That's rare. I wish I was one of those. That's maybe why I went to all the trouble to learn all this, was because I would love to have been one of those kinds of people, but I'm not. And I find that is more often that we recycle. This goes round and round. We ruminate, we justify inside, we come up with the story about how we were right and they were wrong, and it sticks. You build your case. You build your case, but you know, I want you to just think back on what I've asked you to recall, and I know this is not necessarily your fondest memory, but what was lost? What did you lose in that moment when that break occurred? Trust, yeah. I mean, and there's aspects of real loss in this. Real loss. It's not just an artificial, airy-fairy kind of things. The first thing I think that goes, but again, I'm beholden to you if you would care to offer anything in terms of your assessment. But I think the first thing that goes is some aspect of good old optimism. You know, right away, the tarnish has come off life. It's, man, what kind of world would allow this sort of thing to happen? But real money, real opportunity, prospective, future income, investment that you've made. Here's an example, 2 collaborators in a software business in Houston. They're working on an innovation that can have $1 billion plus impact in the market. They're partners. There's the innovator who came up with the gizmo, and she's paired with a marketer who's the commercializer. And they are going along well. The innovation is coming very close to being ready for release. And in a core meeting, the marketer pulls a fast one in front of the innovator to try and gain some particular personal advantage with someone that they're talking to. Right away, their partnership is in extreme jeopardy. Like, what's going to happen if this sort of thing goes on into the future? There is no knowing what kind of losses could ensue. But do you think there would be any possible monetary impact coming out of that fracture? I see heads nodding. What about morale, communication, collaboration? 2 brothers heading divisions of a resource supply company, one Canada, one US. The founder, thought it would be a great idea to set them up in competition with each other. He thought that was a really smart way to go. The result, they wouldn't talk to each other. And people were enrolled in one camp or the other camp. Communication was on a need-to-know basis. Do you think that had any impact with client relations? Do you think there was any downline cost? How would you like to work there? Would that be fun? Would it be a lovely career path for you? I think coming back to the first cost, and you may be enumerating in your own mind the sort of cost that you think could ensue from a breach like this. But I think the first cost is the burden on the soul. Just catch up a little bit here. Here are the brothers. There's an arrow lodged in your heart, and that isn't a valentine. This is like a piece of lead in the soul, and it sticks in there. What was blown away? What was destroyed? I think the first thing that was destroyed, obviously, was the tie of trust. But gone was the expectation of relationship that we learned. Now, where do we learn the fundamental things that we learn? Well, we learn them from our parents, we learn them from television, we learn them from media. And the version portrayed by media is generally relationships are either rosy or they're gone. They're over. There's not a lot of middle ground explored in the media, although there are some wonderful books, of course, about people recovering from fractures. And it's great drama. It's wonderful drama. But most people come supplied with it's a rosy illusion. It's a crystalline kind of version of how things should be. And very often, they don't have a backup. When that's shattered, it's kind of like, now what? Do I become a cynic? So that radical disillusionment echoes through your life and how you interact with others. So what stance do you adopt? Well, you can toughen up. There's Clint, a cold-eyed drifter. Nothing's going to get to him, I don't think. He's certainly not going to show that in his ways. That's one version. You could withdraw into a shuttered fortress. You could angrily armor up, lash out at people who look like they might cross you. And I know a woman who does this chronically. She gets close to people, and when they're close and it looks like there's just even a little bit of a shudder going through, she just cuts them off. And they're like, bang, we're over. And she's done that with several really vital creative partnerships. And if I asked her, isn't there an extreme cost to doing that? She would come back with a justification of, yeah, but you don't understand. She's really not worthwhile. And that's what people do. They construct these versions of justification. And what they're doing is they're retracting into paths of protective protection. They're protecting their fragile egos from further damage against the slings and arrows of life. And what can happen is that can occur in layers, so that people become enclosed in cocoons of protection instead of out there interacting vitally and freely in life. So if you've done that, if you've constructed a safety zone around yourself, I want to ask you, how's that working for you? Are you missing the full dimensions of collaboration that are possible? Is there a warmth to life that is denied you inside there? So, back to your strategy. I didn't mention freezing. I think that's a pretty common one. People freeze and withdraw into helplessness and resignation. And the mission is to adapt and protect that fragile self. So your options. You could let it ride. You just sort of pretend that nothing really happened. But it did. And you can't unmake it. You could take a conventional route. Avoid, gray out, freeze out. Are you an avoider? Or are you a person who likes to take action when something happens to you? Or people can get into rage and attack and fulmination about this situation. But you're at a crossroads. And what's interesting is you can always come back to that crossroads. It's not like, even with things that happened, I think, Gordon, your example was 10 years ago. It's still possible to come back to that crossroads. You can look at what you've done. You might have complained to other people, told stories about this. You might have tried to slam them, get even. None of that works. Nothing does anything to resolve the fracture. And resolution of a fracture, how many here have had a broken bone? Several? Yeah. So, did that get better on its own? Or did you have to have an intervention? You need help. You've got to do something. Now, I'm not advocating get help in the sense of go and get a specialist. Because a specialist is going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. What do you think that is? You've got to go and talk to them. The question is, what do you say? The sophisticated players, they have another avenue. They restructure. Have you ever been restructured? Sounds like a little of that happened to you, maybe? I don't know, you're nodding. Restructure is pretty familiar. All of a sudden you find yourself on the outs. The power players have just moved you aside and made you a non-factor. Pretty common. So those are things that are typical ways, typical resorts that people have. Or you could do something else. Now, that something else could lead to a better relationship. It could also bomb. I'm not going to make any universal guarantee that this will work in every situation. The difference is you're moving forward. You're not pulling back. But there would be risk involved, wouldn't there, in coming forward? I might get it wrong. I might make a gaffe. Might be inappropriate. I think we're in that territory already. Maybe I'll be clumsy, make it worse. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know how this will play out. I can't be sure. But I want to ask you just a little check here. Do you sit on the sidelines when there's risk and possibility? Or do you like to take a step forward into the game and see how it plays out and trust yourself that you have the capacity and the wit to handle a situation even though you don't know all the ins and outs? Nobody will give you a guarantee of satisfaction. But I don't want to. I don't want to. Well, I can guarantee you this. If you don't, you'll have to get used to a diminished version of yourself. That you will know that you could have done something. That you haven't met your own high standards. And the relationship, it'll move from being an asset to being an impediment. And you will be a non-factor in it. So there's something else. It's a bridge. It's a bridge to another reality, one that offers rewards. And what are those? This amps up your capacity and it opens up a future. It honors you and the other person fully. And what's the reward? Reunited, and it feels so good. It really does feel magnificent. A deeper ability to function together, a better and actionable understanding of who you are and who they are, really. An opportunity to be solidly, creatively together, to solve important issues and to build anew. Imagine that if you were able to go there in the situation that you've called to mind earlier. But most importantly, you will stand taller. You do this for you, not for them. It benefits both. But the effect is, you know that you did your best, you brought your best. You met your own high standards of yourself. You are the person your dog thinks you are. And that will happen whether the intervention succeeds or fails. Gone is the guilty, anger-ridden, tortured, diminished self. Welcome the new, confident, honest, potent you. So let's come back to this side of the bridge, undecided. I just don't want to go there. I don't want to get hurt, fooled, hurt, let down again. Better to write them off, get rid of them. Forget it. Forget the whole thing. Except you can't. His memory dishes it up over and over. Eventually it will die down. It's like the process of grief. Eventually it will become less to you. But it will always be a burr under your saddle. How do you reckon? How do you reckon with this feeling that a piece of your reality has been exploded, it's been removed? And how do you reckon with the sure knowledge that in your heart you know you could have done better? What do folks want? I saw a great cartoon in the New Yorker. Wouldn't it be great if we could do this anonymously online? I think that's the fantasy, that somehow we're going to be able to do that. Is that true? I don't think so. Is that what's holding you back? And this is a colossal development opportunity. What does development really look like? I think it's more like that than some version where you just get a magical insight and all of a sudden you're transformed into something better. No, development occurs by being in the battle, by being right with people in difficult circumstances and rising up through it to become somebody more than you thought you were going to do. So, what's holding you back? You don't have to remember much if you feel that as a result of this exposure, you think, I'd like to deal with this situation. I'd like to see what I can do about making this right. All you have to remember is fixing fractures. If you go to Fixing Fractures on the web, you'll see that there is a link to the book, Downloads Toolkit. Take the prep sheet. Fill it out concerning your breach, either writing or you can fill it out on your own computer. Consider that breach. It'll take you a while, but you'll get clear. You'll get clear on something. The first thing you'll get clear on is this really important to me? So you don't have to take the step yet, but you can get clarity. And is this person worth it? We call that person, in the context of the book, the VIP. Why are they the VIP? Because you care about them so much that they're the most important person in the world to you, even though they've crossed you. This is a method that's tried and true. It will bear some important results: a better world for you and the VIP, a stronger relationship on a better footing, with an appetite to venture into an optimistic future together. But mainly you do this for you, to fashion a renewed, enhanced, more realistic faith in yourself. I can tell you this, in all the situations I'm aware of where it has been ventured into with a whole heart, it has not let the initiator down. So what's holding you back?